Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch on Mac Sports and the Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook pages, the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel, also on Twitter and Instagram. Like, share, comment, and please subscribe to the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel for all the great Northeast Streaming Sports shows. Our website is nessp.info. Check it out. Shows, info, stores, and links to those stores. I'm Mac with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, bringing you national sports with special focus on the Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack. How are you doing?
Good morning, good morning, good morning. 3 good mornings, Matt, because I haven't seen you in 3 days. I mean, we communicate, but I last saw you Sunday. We go Wednesday to Sunday. And
Yes,
today's
sir.
Wednesday. It's been 3 days.
Yes,
so
sir.
Lots gone on, a lot to talk about.
Yes, I mean, and Jack, you look great today. You look like you've already had a couple pina coladas, and you haven't got caught in the rain, I don't think. But you look very relaxed and comfortable, and it's really as we talked before the show. I'm pretty jealous right now, Jack.
Mac, I mean, I'm enjoying the Florida life, but listen, for temporarily, but I'm going to tell you, I like the virtues of getting up early in the morning. I mean, I know if it was up to you, you'd want to do this show from 1 to 3 in the morning. I mean, that's a little extreme for me. You go around the clock 24 hours. I myself, I like the early to bed, early to rise thing. When I was younger, I would sleep late, get to bed late. I like that consistent schedule, Mac. You're all over the place. I mean, you don't have a clock. You own a watch.
I do, and it's right twice a day, Jack. So anyway, let's do what we do best, Jack. Let's get to the sports, and as you said, there was a couple of really a couple of big stories, but every Wednesday from now on, Jack, we are doing, of course, our baseball review, as that's the day that we have lined up for it. So. So baseball review, Jack, even though it's only really 10 games into the season, maybe a couple more than that in certain other cases, we're going to go through and we're going to review the standings, the games, and any other baseball news that we can. So looking in the NL West first, Jack, the Dodgers at 9-2 are in first, followed by San Diego, San Francisco, Arizona, and Colorado. Yesterday, LA just smoked Colorado. Bayer with shutout. Seager and Taylor both with home runs in like the first 3 pitches, Jack.
That's going to be some race with the Dodgers and Padres. Yu Darvish pitched a gem for the Padres a couple of days ago, and picking up Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, the Padres, they're going to give the Dodgers a serious push all the way to the end. And those 2 teams have gotten off to a quick start. And normally I'd say it's too early in the season. But in the case of the Dodgers and the Padres, you kind of know that they're going to continue it the rest of the way. You're talking about 2 teams that look like they're going to win 100-plus games this year. So it's going to be a heck of a race on the West.
I definitely agree with that. Right now, Bauer is paying off on that crazy contract he got from the Dodgers. But that's just another arm over there, another missile in their ammo. So they're going to be a tough team to beat.
And the Bauer's being investigated, Matt, for some of those baseballs that might have a little something in them. But how does Bauer get those? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Well, the Globetrotters did that with their basketballs when they were playing I forget what the name of the team is they beat all the time. The Generals, I think it was.
The Washington Generals. Darn it, the big question. The biggest losers in all of sports. Was it the 62 Mets or the Washington Generals? I think the Generals did beat the Globetrotters a couple of times. The games were on the up and up. But how would they even beat them on the up and up? Can you imagine a top-of-the-line NBA player decided he had enough and he decided he wanted to play for the Generals against the Globetrotters? Now, were those games fixed? Did they? Yeah, you'd have to say for the most part. Did they let him go once in a while and play a few serious minutes? I don't know. I just want to tell you just one very quick thing, Mac. I went to see the Harlem Globetrotters play the Nassau Coliseum once, and one of the Globetrotters was doing his thing from mid-court, and it's entertainment. But all of a sudden, he wants to get rid of the ball, so he flips it kind of backwards, and from mid-court, he hits the shot. And what? I don't care prearranged or gimmick or anything. How many guys in the NBA could do that? It astounded me.
Yeah, there was always talk. I'm not sure, Jack. I think I read somewhere where the Globetrotters started out as a real team, and then they became ambassadors and ended up becoming a show. But I read somewhere where they did compete. Of course, they were an all-black team for real. And they were a pretty good team at the time. So, even though it was a show when we were growing up, at one times it was for real. So, pretty interesting with that.
The two big stories, the two big arguments, debates I heard when I was young, when I was a kid, is wrestling real, number one? Okay, we would debate whether it was real or fake and all that. As kids, we wanted it to be real, even though deep down we knew it wasn't. And the other one was whether the Harlem Globetrotters could beat the NBA All-Stars. How would they do? And that debate, and we wanted to believe the Globetrotters would beat the best NBA teams. We wanted to believe that. But now as adults, it's a bit of a stretch because, as you know, Mac, there's so much chemistry in basketball. But I will say this, when Wilt still played for the Globetrotters, that certainly would have elevated their chances.
That's the truth, Jack. So back to baseball as we veer down the Globetrotter news. In the Central, the Reds are in first at 7-4, followed by St. Louis, Milwaukee, the Cubs, Pittsburgh. San Francisco came back to beat the Reds in the 6th and 7th. The Reds, I think, do have a chance, but the Cardinals look really tough this year, Jack.
And I'm going to tell you, Mac, the standings are bunched up. You mentioned 11 games. One team's 7-4, the other team's 4-7. It just takes one series, 3 games. One team sweeps a team, the other team loses 2 out of 3, and then they're neck and neck. I can't get excited over the standings now because a week ago we saw what a terrible start the Oakland Athletics got off to. Now they're only 3 1/2 games out.
Definitely. In the East, the Mets and Philly are tied. Florida, Atlanta, Washington are following. The Mets beat the Phillies 4-0. A big 3-run fourth. Nemo, a guy that we talked about, went 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs. Stroman, 6 innings for the win, Jack. Familia looked like with the save. Stroman Stroman looks like a big number 2 anyway, Jack. Let's put it that way.
Stroman is the Mets version of Kyrie Irving. He's going to, complain about something whenever, sometimes it's valid. He was correct the other day when he shouldn't have tweeted, but when they started the game, instead of canceling it, it had rained a lot. and the conditions just weren't good. And then Stroman, after 7 pitches, wasn't going on anymore. The Met organization never should have tried to get the game underway because the conditions were wet and they were slick. And baseball's about cutting, making quick, sudden moves. So if it's slippery out there, you're putting your players under a lot more risk.
Yeah, I mean, to me, a lot of sports have quick cutting in it. Let's not baby the baseball players too much, Jack. So in the AL West, the Angels in first at 7-4, followed by Seattle, Houston, A's, and Texas, as you mentioned, the A's. Dan Duffy for the Royals pitched another good game, Jack. His 10-2-3 scoreless innings has been broken, but Duffy is a big surprise for the Royals. And, I'm happy to see the Royals having something going on anyway.
There's always one team at least, Mac, in baseball, especially baseball. Well, I mean, all sports leagues, but especially baseball, that slips under the radar. We assume that they're going to be very mediocre. We don't look at them carefully because they've had a few down years in a row, and traditionally they're not good. And I know the Royals won the 2015 World Series, but then they started going downhill. They're a small market team. We didn't take into account, several of their off-season moves, their farm system, and the upside that they had. And I think they're the one team that we kind of fell asleep on, and they're going to surprise us, okay? They're going to surprise us a bit this year and be really good next year. So, and they've gotten off to that type of start.
I do agree with that. Good morning to Keith. Good morning to our third host on the show. Carlos, as always, joins us in the morning. Glad to have you both aboard. In the AL West, let me get there. AL Central, sorry. Cleveland 6-4 with the Royals, Minnesota, Chicago, and Detroit, all within 1.5 games of each other. Cleveland won last night 2-0. I don't count Cleveland out, Jack, because they have a great manager over there.
And they have a great pitcher, Shane Bieber. He pitched a gem yesterday, too. And listen, Cleveland didn't make the playoffs last year. They made the playoffs. They lost Francisco Lindor, so that's a bit of a blow. But to me, it's a much bigger impact on the team if you lose a frontline starting pitcher. But Cleveland, with that said, Cleveland's been diminished with some of the moves they've made. And I'd really be surprised if they were back in the playoffs this year. You don't count them out. I kind of have written them off as far as being a playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't count them out of
what does caliente mean, Mac?
Means hot, Jack. Hot.
Oh, no. Wait. I'm going to be outside later. I mean, should I switch into a T-shirt? Will I be too warm in this or what?
Jack, that was pretty corny, but you made it.
Oh, man. Thank you.
And in the East, Boston's in the lead at 7-3. Baltimore, Toronto, Yankees, and Tampa Bay are all tied 2.5 games back. The Sox win 2-0 over Minnesota. They play good over there at the Red Sox, and I think they'll play fundamentally sound with their manager that came back, Jack. I don't think the Red Sox will make the playoffs this year, but I think they're going to be a whole heck of a lot better than they were last year.
I mean, I don't remember their record last year. What did they win, like 73 games or whatever? I'm not high on the Red Sox. I mean, they're not going to contend this year. I mean, yeah, it's typical in baseball. Teams are going to hang in for a couple of months. They'll overachieve. Maybe around the All-Star game, they'll still be in contention. But then it's inevitable that they're going to fall off. I mean, the Red Sox don't have the horses as far as their pitching staff goes. Their everyday lineup is so-so. And I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised if the Red Sox play 500 ball when all is said and done.
Well, the Red Sox did play in the coldest weather since 1979 at 33 degrees, Jack, with snow falling. So that's pretty interesting. Sometimes you get that at the end of the year, but they got it at the beginning of the year, and there you go. So hey, listen,
listen, 4 World Series titles in the last 20 years. They've done great. The Red Sox don't have to win a game the next couple of years, and their fan base should be happy. But their fan base doesn't seem to be complaining. There's no discontent there. It seems in the New England, Boston area, of all the teams, the one the most discontent they have with is the New England Patriots. It's funny, they don't have that discontent with the Boston Celtics. They don't have it with the Boston Red Sox right now. And the Bruins are the Bruins. They're a gritty team. They're doing, they're positioned now that they're going to be in the playoffs if the season ended. But something about the New England Patriots, I mean, I don't understand the Boston fans get all hype about them. And considering the Patriots' level of excellence, I don't see why.
I agree. In the NBA, Jack, in the East, you have the Philly and the Nets tied in first, followed by Milwaukee, Atlanta, and Boston. Atlanta beat Toronto 108-103. The Lakers bounced back from their loss to the Knicks and beat Charlotte 101-93. The Jazz beats the Thunder 106-96. The Suns beat Miami 106-85. The Celtics slide by the Trailblazer, Tatum with 32 points, 9 rebounds. So the Celtics have been playing better, recently. Tatum, they do have a big three, Jack. They just don't. I don't know. I don't know if they can compete with the Nets or the 76ers, but they've been playing well lately.
They've been playing well. I think it was Tatum Brown. He had COVID. He's still a little weak. They've been playing better. They have a big three. The Celtics might surprise us a little in the playoffs, but ultimately, I can't see them for the life of me coming out of the East. The team in the East with more upside, believe it or not, okay, who can make a little run at it. If anyone's going to cause a major surprise, that would be the Atlanta Hawks. When you look at their lineup, the players they have, Trae Young, Capella, you look at their bench, Lou Williams, Gallinari, I mean, they have upside, and that's something like 28-22 now. They're playing better. Mac, it's not a team's overall record for the season. It's what they're doing as they're going into the playoffs. Because last year, the Miami Heat were pretty inconsistent for a good part of the season. But they got it together towards the end and then made that great run during the playoffs to go to the finals and even take the Lakers to 6 games. So I think the Atlanta Hawks, that would be my major surprise team. And listen, the Nets haven't had their big three on the court all year. And if for whatever reason, if they can't during the playoffs, they're no longer the favorite. I mean, and the Sixers, of course, the Sixers are going, how far they go determines, Joel Embiid, him staying on the court as well, because he's missed his good share games.
Well, let's get through the NHL news really quick so we can get the Philly guy up here who already popped in backstage. I love having him on. The games in the West, Colorado, the standings in the West, Colorado's 29-9, followed by the Knights, the Wild, the Blues. In the North, Toronto's at 28-11, followed by the Jets, the Oilers, in Montreal. In the Central, you have the Hurricanes and Tampa Bay tied in first, followed by the Panthers and Predators. In the East, the Capitals and the Islands are tied. You have Boston in there, and of course you have Pittsburgh in there. And the Rangers sneak by Philly for 5th. Anthony Mantha leaves Detroit for Washington after signing a 4-year contract, Jack. So you have Washington picking up a pretty good player for this playoff rush.
Yeah, I'm anxious to talk to Carter about it when he comes on as our guest tomorrow. All the moves that were made. at the trade deadline. You know, it's funny. I was looking at the NHL power rankings, okay, the 32 teams, and the Islanders are now seventh, you know, in the power rankings. The Rangers are 15th. They're kind of caught in the middle. And the Rangers, they beat the Devils yesterday 3-0. And it was one of those games where the Rangers led 1-0 going into the third period. But the one thing the Devils don't have is firepower. So you kind of knew the Rangers were in control, even though it was a one-goal game. But the Rangers are 4 points out of that last playoff position. And can they make a run? Can they nab the playoff position? Because history tells us any team can win in the NHL playoffs. The NHL playoffs are like playoffs in any other sport. I mean, it's extremely unpredictable.
I definitely agree with that. Let's bring the Philly sports guy up, Jamie Pags, with some great Philly information. And, he knows a lot about what's going on in hockey too, Jack. So let's bring him up on board. How you doing today, Pags?
Good morning, guys. How are you?
We're hanging right in there, man. I mean, we're back. It's Wednesday. It feels good to be back and broadcasting again. A lot of Phillies news out there. I mean, you have the Flyers first that we just talked about hockey, and they lost 2 in a row. I think they lost to the Capitals 6-1 last night, Bags. And at the trade deadline, they really didn't do nothing to add to their defense. I was really surprised they didn't get a strong defenseman or a sniper or something like that where it could add to their team. They kind of didn't do, too much. You got Giroux and, Voracek. They're getting older. The window could be closing on them soon. They're in your mid-30s almost now, I would say.
Yeah.
So I was surprised that they didn't, pick up another defenseman and make a run at it or something,
Pax, I want to say something with the Flyers that might make you wince a little bit, okay? Might make you wince. You're going to get a little hype about it. Don't get too defensive. I'm starting to think Carter Hart is the Flyers' version of the Sam Darnold when he was with the Jets. Are they going to stick with him, and then see ultimately he's not their franchise goalie? Or, is it just his confidence isn't there, or what? It just hasn't worked out.
No, it actually has more to do with the defense. You can't put all of the blame on Carter Hart here, although, the puck stops with the goalie, and when the goalie's not making those stops, it becomes real hard. So I can see where you're coming from with that. I'll give it like a hair of credence. The truth of the matter is that the defense, since Niskanen left last year, and I tell you, in the playoffs, Niskanen was like the veteran, and he was giving the puck up all the time, and that's what made him retire. He just saw that he just didn't have it anymore, especially going into the playoffs. He was tired. He looked old, and then he retired this year. And that veteran loss really was a big deal for the Flyers, a much bigger deal than I even thought it would be. And the defense has been horrific, just horrific. When you're letting up 6, 9 goals, losing to teams like Buffalo, and just not giving efforts, like just having lapses in focus during these games, it makes things really hard. And they couldn't do anything. I mean, Voracek and Giroux, obviously Giroux's got a no trade clause. Voracek is making way too much money. Nobody wants to take on that type of salary. And they just didn't have much to be able to do. I was happy that they got rid of Gustafsson. Gustafsson, I mean, I didn't think he was going to play again in a Flyers uniform, and they got a bag of pucks and some Tim Hortons for him in the process of that. Raffl, I thought was going to, is a really good addition by the Capitals, mostly because I thought last year that it was time for him to move on, and that he was a good asset that would get back something in return. Now, 5th round pick may not sound like a lot, but in hockey, it actually does make some sense, so, and that was about what his worth was. You may have been able to get a 4th round pick, but when you're doing things last second during the trade deadline, It doesn't. You don't have the opportunity to like kind of go back and forth. And I mean, everything going up into the trade deadline was really quiet, and then all of a sudden there was a huge flurry of action, and that's that was kind of how hockey was this year in total. But the Flyers are not a playoff team, and it's unfortunate because I mean I love them to death, but you saw last night. I mean they just don't have the defense to be able to handle it. 11 up 4 goals in the first period. They went 3 for 3 in the power play is what the Capitals went. 3 power plays, 3 goals, and you're never going to win games if you can't stop stop them from happening.
Pags, I want to get your thoughts on this because last year I started kind of following hockey again, and they went up against the Islanders in the playoffs, and the Flyers and the Bruins had the 2 best, home records. They were if you got them at home, maybe it would have been different. But the Islanders came out aggressive and took it to the Flyers, forechecking, physical, strong defense, and could have won that series in a lot less than 7. The Flyers hung in there and showed their grit. Do you think that one loss, that one series, do you think that affected the coaching, the chemistry, everything? Because the Flyers this year, we all expected them to be at least in the top 3, top 2 anyway.
No, I don't put a lot of credence into the loss. I felt that. So Trotz is a great coach with the Islanders, and where the Flyers I felt lost that series was on the boards. I mean, so obviously the forecheck made a difference, but you could tell that the Islanders were just faster, and they worked the boards tremendously. So usually when the Flyers were clearing the puck, they would actually send it out along the boards and try to get it out of the zone, and that's where the Islanders really excelled. And they just couldn't keep up with the defense. The defense, the Islanders were skating circles around the Flyers during that series. And this year, when the Flyers started out really well, the bounces were going their way. Like you could tell that there were still mistakes that were happening. And I was saying even early in the season that you just cannot give the puck away in the defensive zone. It's going to end up in goals. And the Flyers at the beginning of the season were able to overcome those giveaways and be able to put the pucks in the net. As we got further and further along in the season, they just weren't able to do it. And then the special teams, both the penalty kill and the power play, has stunk. And they have not been able to practice. It always seems that there's 4 games in 7 days that they have been dealing with. Not that any other team can practice either, but they just have not been able to resolve some of the issues that they've had.
Pags, Philly is unforgiving towards coaches of teams that struggle, but AV has seemed to escape criticism. The town hasn't gotten on him yet.
That's not true. That's not true. If you go into Flyers groups, they are on him. I have been very critical, not necessarily of AV. I think that AV's style is still working. Obviously not this year. I think that there's been a little bit of frustration. For some reason or another, I just don't understand why the defense has just trailed off so badly this year. Like, what has happened from...
I lost to the Sabres 3 late goals. Are you kidding me? The Buffalo Sabres?
Yeah.
Arguably the worst team in the NHL to collapse against a team like that. That would demoralize me if I were a player. I would say, no, we're not making the playoffs. They showed
it at that well last night, didn't they? They let up 4 goals in the first period. They were out of it, and then Washington, just all they did was just kind of skate the rest of the way.
Let me tell my attitude. I did some channel scanning. The games had gotten underway, and I turned to the NHL channel where I was able to get some of the games, and I immediately see that the Capitals are up 5-1. So, of course, I go to the Ranger Devil game, which is a 1-0 game, more entertaining. But once it was 5-1 to the Capitals early in the game, and I'm saying it's over. The game barely started, it seemed, and it's over.
I had to work a little late last night, so I didn't even get to watch the game at all. And I just checked on my phone, and it was 4-1, and it wasn't even the end of the first period yet. And I had to ask him, I'm like, am I looking at this properly? Is it really 4-1? And you know how passionate I get, and I am happy I didn't watch that game. I didn't even bother turning it on. There was no point in that for me because it was just going to ruin the rest of my night. You know, when I sit there and I can watch, when I bring more passion than the team that I'm rooting for, I have an issue with that. And I kind of feel that that is part of the problem that they're having now, that they are demoralized, that this team is not going anywhere this year. They have nothing to fight for, and they kind of showed it, you know. And with the trade deadline, they weren't really able to make any moves because of that. They didn't really have the cap space, nor did anybody want to take on the cap space. And ultimately,
Pags, I hate to say it, man, but playing in sports and coaching in sports, that comes down to the coaching staff. I don't know if it's the head coach, the defensive coach, one of the coordinators. They lost the team, and I mean, you guys had too good of a team to lose. I mean, I don't know what happened there, but if I'm the general manager there, I'm calling all the coaches in the office, and there's going to be some changes made right now and I mean, the season may be over for y'all, but pride, man, let's go out there and play with pride. And if you can't get your players to do that, then there's a question in coaching, and that's I'm sorry to say that's the way I look at it.
Well, and I agree with you there. I feel that now that the trading deadline is over, it's time to start bringing up the kids from the minor leagues, and let's see what we've got down there. Let them start to get some experience against the guys that are actually playing in the NHL and making the big bucks, and see what we have so that we can. Because I already know what this team has got. The Nolan Patrick experiment is over for me. Oscar Lindblom, once he got back from cancer, he just hasn't been the same player. And as much as I love Oscar Lindblom and feel for him for what he's gone through, this is still professional sports. And, our goal is to win championships. And if you're not doing what you need to do, then you can't be playing up here. And that's part of what's going on. Our whole defense, Provorov is the only guy that I feel like is doing something. And he has been playing so much that he has not been, producing anymore. And he's starting to trail off. And because of that, it's just everybody's tired now. Like, you can't play 40 minutes a game and expect that to be able to last throughout the entire NHL season. And right now, this team is falling apart. And I'm willing to give AV a little bit more leeway, but I'm not willing to give it to his assistants. The power play and the penalty kill has been so horrific. The defense has been so horrific that I would change them up specifically, and that would be where I'd start to shake up.
I mean, something's got to be done, Pags. I mean, you got to at least have a little pride, man. And Philadelphia, I know the Flyers were definitely a favorite. There was a reason for that. They're a good team, and for them not to be playing this well, as something's going on. Besides just the players and COVID and all that stuff. There's something going on in the locker room. So let's get to basketball real quick. We got the 76ers tied with the Nets. The 76ers did pick up a couple players for their bench, which is very smart because they're going to need them come the playoff push or maybe to get people rest or to come in when somebody's cold or hurt. So you got the 76ers, you got the Nets. Milwaukee's in there. I still don't think they're gonna do anything spectacular because even when they're the best, they fold in the playoffs. I think it comes down to you two guys, man. I really do. You got Atlanta kind of making a little noise, but I don't think they'll do anything. Embiid with Howard backing him up. You got Simmons, you got Curry, you got Harris. You got a strong team going up against an all-star team. So it's going to be an epic battle, I think. And one of you two teams really got a shot at winning the championship this year. What's your thoughts?
I've been saying it all along. I thought that the Sixers were going to come out as the number 2 seed in the East, and then they were going to represent the East in the finals. I'm sticking with that. There's been a lot of talk right now that Ben Simmons hasn't been playing up to snuff lately. he's dealing with something that I'm not even going to try to get into right now, but he's dealing with some personal situation. And I feel like that'll start to resolve itself and he'll be able to be right for the playoffs. It's good that this is happening now and not being a distraction going into the playoffs. We have a big game tonight against the Nets, although I look at these two teams right here, and I feel like neither one of them are going to play the way they want to, because they don't want to show the other team what they've got. They don't want to show the other team their cards. And that although this is supposed to be like an epic battle this evening, Nets versus Sixers, this is a precursor to the Eastern Conference Finals, which I believe is going to be. I feel like that this is going to be a little lackluster today. You might see some plays, but I think
it's about seeding. It's about seeding. And I kind of wonder, is it better to be the number 2 seed in the East instead of number 1? Because the number 2 seed, you don't want to be beaten up going to the Eastern Finals, okay? The team that's had an easier time going to the Eastern Finals, that could be the difference who comes out of the East between the Nets and the Sixers, who are the 2 clear favorites. Now, the number 2 seed would probably play the number 3 seed ultimately in all probability, which I think would be Milwaukee. Now, would Milwaukee be a little easier than the number 4 seed who could be an Atlanta Hawk team? Let's say the Hawks, a team that has momentum, they've got excellent personnel, they run an upswing unlike Milwaukee. So would they be a harder proposition for the number 1 seed? That's what I'm kind of thinking. In other words, between the Nets and the Sixers, whoever's the number 2 seed might be better off than being number 1.
I don't think that'll matter. I think the biggest difference in all of the Eastern teams is going to be defense. And I feel like the Sixers play it. I feel like the Nets don't. And that's going to be the biggest difference, that the Nets have to outscore teams where the Sixers can actually lock you down when they want to. And that's what's going to be the difference between the Nets and the Sixers. And that's why the Sixers are going to be the ones that end up in the finals over the Nets.
Big 3 is all healthy and in peak form. The Nets are going to be you're talking about Kevin Durant, an all-time great. James Harden, arguably an all-time great. Kyrie Irving, say what you want about him. At his best, he's an absolute star. And then you look at the bench, LaMarcus Aldridge and a number of other pieces. I mean, if just one of the big 3 are out for the Nets, I agree with you. I think the 76ers beat the Nets. But if the big 3 are raring to go for the Nets, all cylinders are going, I think they're unstoppable.
Well, I guess we're going to see. That's going to be an opinion that we won't be able to see the answer to until late May, early June, because ultimately I kind of feel a little differently. I feel like that the Nets are scared. That's why they picked up. They got a virtual bench of all previous All-Stars, and I think about back, one of the last couple of years of Andy Reid when they had the Dream Team, and that's kind of very similar to what the Nets created. They created the Dream Team, and that dream becomes a nightmare when they start to lose. And when I think that the Sixers could really start to frustrate them, and when they start to frustrate them in that 7-game series, you could see the Nets really start to deteriorate very quickly.
Let me tell you, believe it or not, the guy I think is the difference maker for the Sixers against the Nets, if they're to beat them, would be Dwight Howard, believe it or not, because a motivated Dwight Howard, an angry Dwight Howard, who badly wants to kick the Nets' rear end and puts it all on the line. I mean, he's still an all-star caliber player, even though he's coming off the bench.
I agree. I agree that he would definitely have a lot to say and a lot to feel about that. But I'm going to go a little bit higher. I think it's going to be Tobias Harris. I think Tobias Harris is going to be the biggest difference in that series. Joel's going to get his. You're going to have Simmons that's going to be able to do his. Tobias Harris is going to be the one that's really going to make the biggest impact and difference in that series. And I think that if he has the series that I expect that he's going to, that there's not going to be any problem. We're going to be facing off against. I think it's going to be one of the LA teams coming out of the West. I know that they have, there's Denver and there's Utah, but
Yeah, it's not that with Jamal Murray's injury, Denver no longer is in the Big Four there. They've slid behind. With Jamal Murray out, I can't see Denver coming out of the West anymore.
And I can't see Utah doing it either, because I feel like that they're a bunch of crybabies, and when it comes to them starting to get beat, they're going to deteriorate, similar to the way that I think the Nets are going to.
Well, I'll disagree with your last statement. I think Utah represents the West. But, I mean, you never know. You never know, Pags. I mean, you never know when it comes down to the end. You don't. But I do think believe it or not, the key player at Jackson's Dwight Howard, you say Harris, I think it's going to be Curry. I think it's going to be Curry on Kyrie. And if he can defend him and he can shoot a little bit and at least slow him down, I think you guys got a good shot. So we'll see what happens with that. The Phillies, they could be ready to win. I mean, it's as early as we talk about all the time. The hiring of Dave Dombrowski, I want to talk about a little bit. The head of baseball operations, he did a great job wherever he's been. I mean, he's been with. I think if I'm correct, I think it was with Montreal. I might be incorrect with that. He's built good teams wherever he's been, or it could have been Toronto. I'm trying to remember. I know it's one of those Canadian teams that he built into a winner. He's built good teams wherever he's been. And since he's taken over, there's no we're going to trade. We're going to wait till next year. They're going for it right now. You guys had a little off night against the Mets, but again, it's early in the season. I've been telling Jack, man, you guys have just as good a shot of anybody over there.
I agree. I feel that the starting pitching, the top three are going to win a lot more than they're going to lose, and you just need to be able to get the innings from the other two, and it's still going to be the biggest difference is the bullpen here, and when the bullpen makes mistakes, when they make defensive mistakes, that's oh my God, a killer. I mean, against Atlanta, I mean, thank God that referee, the umpire saw the big toe go across the plate where nobody else seen that.
Pags, I'm mad at your manager, who I love, Joe Girardi. Being a Yankee fan, I love Joe Girardi. I always did. But to hear him say afterwards, well, he feels the toe touched the plate. He can't base that on anything. He should have just kept his mouth shut, accept a win. What's your opinion of replay now? What's the sense in having replay?
I agree. There shouldn't be replay unless, if you're going to mechanize the game, then mechanize it. Don't buy all it's doing is wasting time. Umpires have been making bad calls since the beginning of baseball. So why bother trying to change it now? Like, you want to mechanize, you want to do the strike zone and make that, we're going to have that robotic. We're going to be able to go to replay and see some of the differences. I tell you, every time I think a replay should be overturned, it's not. And it makes me think of when they were doing replays of pass interference calls, for football, just that they weren't going to prove the referees wrong. And the more that you start to do that, and the more that they start to go to replay and prove these umpires wrong, the more that they're going to have to go to replay. So, and that I feel that MLB sees that as well. They're saying, you know what? We don't want these teams to have to go to replay. We don't want them to make this call. And if they're going to make this call 9 times out of 10, they're going to be proven wrong. We're going to stand behind our umpires. And I feel that that's kind of what happened here. Like, again, he didn't touch the plate. You know what I mean? I don't think he touched the plate.
Look at the Mets. Michael Conforto sticks his arm out, and the ball should have been called a strike, but it hits him.
Right. And they win a game because of it. And they win a game because of it. And the rules state, and they couldn't, and that was the problem with that call, was that they couldn't, he originally called it a strike. And it doesn't matter whether it hits him or not. If it's in the strike zone, it's a strike. And the fact that they couldn't replay that portion of it, all that replay could do was say, did the ball hit him or did it not hit him? They couldn't replay whether it was a strike or not. And because of that, they wound up winning the game. So, and that's that when you have calls like that, and you have calls like you did against Atlanta. Hey, we're from Philadelphia. We're not used to calls going our way for any reason, and so that was like a big surprise. And we wound up getting a win because of it. those are the things that are going to happen. You know, a wise man said at one time, you're going to, in baseball, you're going to win 60, you're going to lose 60. What happens within those other 42 that make the biggest difference? And, I'm going to say that the win against Atlanta, with the big toe, I'm putting that into my 42. That's going to be part of the 42 that we could look back and say, hey, that win, the umpires made the difference for that. And because of that win, we may have that one extra game up on somebody to get in the playoffs.
You never know. You never know, guys. The Eagles draft is coming up. Still some defensive backs in the market that are eligible. We know what the Eagles have, I think, Pags. You guys got two very explosive running backs that they didn't utilize enough last year. You got a young quarterback who can run. We'll see how he does leading the team. Your wide receivers, I don't know about. Your defensive backs, I don't know about. Where do you go? What do you think? You're the GM of the Eagles right now. Do you pick up a free agent defensive back to kind of see if you can strengthen that up? Where do you start drafting? I mean, we've talked about before, you're like me, I want to build a foundation. But if one of those great wide receivers come up and you're up, you turn that down?
I get asked this question probably more often than not. And I personally, I go defensive back. I mean, you know me, I like the line. That's where I would choose. Yeah, they don't make too many big guys that are agile and able to move and do their thing. So I always want to do offensive and defensive line first and foremost. That's where championships are won.
Do you say Sertana Horn over Devonta Smith? Is that what you're saying?
Say that again?
Sertana Horn over Devonta Smith in the draft? Because the Eagle fans are going to be going crazy if come number 12, if they don't move up and Devonta Smith is on the board, the Eagle fans are going to be going haywire for the organization to take him.
Well, I feel that we should go, defensive back. I think that's where our biggest needs are. You know what? We have a lot of first round, second round wide receiver picks that happened over the last couple of years that I don't trust them to make the pick on wide receiver. I feel the same. I feel that if they were to take any type of wide receiver, whatever wide receiver they take, because everybody remembers Rager. They took Rager over Jefferson, which was a bad choice because everybody had Jefferson rated higher. And then you think of J.J. Ortega-Whiteside and DK Metcalf. And again, there's a lot of teams that missed on DK Metcalf, including the Eagles. However, again, that's what it's always looked at, that we could have had this guy and not have this guy. I don't trust. It doesn't matter which receiver we're going to take. I feel that the other receiver is going to have been better. And because of that, there's always going to, hey, well, we moved down to 12 and we could have gotten him at this time. That's why I want to go defensive back. I'd rather go on the defensive side of the ball. I trust that guy would be able to start right away. Any of the top three on the board for, in defensive back, I feel that there's a lot more of them that are going to fall, and we're going to have a much better chance of picking up them. And I feel like that those guys are a lot less opportunity to miss than everybody else.
But the latest talk is that the Eagles might be looking to move down. They went from 6 to 12, but with the extra draft capital, they might be looking to make a deal.
Maybe. I mean, already they have the most picks in this draft. So they have 10 picks to go with. Picking up extra draft picks for this year or deferring them to next year by trading them away. Hey, listen, if they could pick up another first-round pick by trading, down in the first round and somebody wants to move up to try to get somebody, I'm game for that. If they want to try to pick up another second-round pick because somebody wants to move up from like 24, 25 and give up their second-round pick to move all the way up to number 12, I'm game for that because they got to be able to get some talent. And ultimately, if they don't trust the way that they pick, you need to pick a lot. Hey, listen, if we have 12 guys, there's got to be one or two that got to be good. If you missed on all 12, well, then Howie Roseman, then you shouldn't be here anymore. And that's kind of how I feel about that as well.
Well, Pat, since you're with us here during this part of the program, we do the Wall of Fame. And this one you're going to like, okay? This is a guy middle linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles during their early championship years. Our Wall of Fame inductee is Chuck Bednarik, called Concrete Charlie. An unbelievable middle linebacker. Was the last really full-time two-way player, played center and middle linebacker, and was the anchor of that defense. Yes, he was. So as you see, he's a full-time two-way player, center, middle linebacker, 2 NFL championships, 10 Pro Bowls, and a devastating hitter, guys. So what I'm going to do, just for you Eagle fans out there, and since you are joining us, because, of course, Pags comes on every Wednesday, and you guys support him like crazy, we're going to go ahead and we're going to try and show you the video clip of the famous hit on Frank Gifford that put him out of the ball game and pretty much ended his career, if you want to know the truth. So let's see if we can do that for you all right now. We're going to try and bring it up and show you a little video of that hit. So, come to me, baby. Come to me. There we go. Are we going to do this for me? Or are you going to play games? Thank you.
A one-way street, and a Mack truck is coming the opposite way.
Frank Gifford caught the ball underneath of Bednarik, and he was trying to get to the sideline to stop the clock. Well, he got stopped. I mean, he got hit. Bednarik hit him, and he just leveled Frank. I mean, Frank was level and knocked him cold, of course. And Frank missed a whole year of football the following season. That's how hard he got hit. I thought Bednarik killed him.
His head snapped. He went backwards, and the ball flew in the air. And there it was. Chuck Weber fell on it. I knew the game was over. I had no idea where Frank Gifford was, and then when I saw him recover the ball and I turned around, and then simultaneously I was with a gesture like this, standing over him, and I said these exact words: "This effing game is over."
So,
one-way
so there you go. Let me see if I can
truck is
cut that
coming
out
the
here.
opposite way.
Let's cut that out. And there you go, guys.
Well, I'll tell you, Chuck Bednarik in the 1960 NFL championship game when the Eagles beat the Packers, that was Vince Lombardi's only loss in the championship game as a head coach. But Bednarik liked telling the story. I think it was Paul Hornung who had the ball at the end of Jim Taylor. I forgot which of the two. But Bednarik was lying on top of that player, the last play of the game, because the Packers had been driving down the field. They just ran out of time more than anything. But Bednarik would lie on top of the ball handler the last play of the game. And he took his time getting up. And the seconds went off, and then he said to him when the final gun went up, "Now you can get up now because this bleeping game is over." Okay, he liked to tell that story.
Yeah, that was Taylor that he did that to, and they end up making a penalty of delay a game if you do that from now on. So, Concrete Charlie, Pags, at 236, he could have played today at linebacker. A big man at that time, and really dominated the defense as a linebacker for the Eagles. One of the Hall of Famers out there. What do you think?
He played 53 minutes a game. So it's funny. For Christmas, I gave my brother that picture of him standing over Frank Gifford. So it is an iconic moment in Philadelphia Eagles history. He is the embodiment of what we want from the Philadelphia Eagles. That's what the fan thinks about when they think of what a Philadelphia Eagle should be. They think of Chuck Bednarik and they think of Brian Dawkins. Those are the two guys specifically that come to mind when you think of Philadelphia Eagles. And there's nobody more deserving to be on the Wall of Fame, as an Eagle than him. Like I said, he was really ahead of his time for the game. And, it's funny. The reason why they called him Concrete Charlie was because in the off season, he worked up in Bethlehem selling bags, bags of concretes and such like that. He worked at a masonry supply store. So, and that was the reason why they called him Concrete Charlie, not because he hit like so strong, but
Frank Gifford would never sign that picture when he was alive. People would come up to Frank Gifford with that picture, and Frank Gifford would say, "That's not football." And it always bothered Frank Gifford because he'd say, "Well, I was off balance. That's the reason why he was laid out like that." So it always bothered Frank Gifford a great deal, and I can understand that. How would you like to be laid out, knocked out cold, and a guy standing over you like that, and people coming up asking you to autograph that picture? I don't think I would have autographed it.
Neither would I. And I felt that anybody who tried to bring that up to him was being disrespectful. You know what I mean? It's like Frank Gifford was a great player, and he did, he got his clock cleaned on that play. You know what I mean? He wasn't paying attention, and he just got smashed. And that's what happens. It happens.
It happens.
Well,
it happens to everybody.
The great Jimmy Brown, he intimidated middle linebackers like Ray Nitschke and Sam Huff. But Chuck Bednarik, he didn't intimidate at all. Chuck Bednarik would say, "Bring it on." And Jim Brown had a great deal of respect for Chuck Bednarik, his toughness, because he could sense it on the field. Bednarik would never back down from him. And Brown really, he had a ton of respect for that.
Well, and old school they stopped making them like that. It was like old school football players. When I hear that music that was being played in that video, it's like that, when I think of John Facenda, where he's, in the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, like that's what I think of, like old school football. You can't recreate those moments anymore. When he was like, he made football an art. When he was just the way he spoke and the way they did, and to be able to show those, and they had the horns in the background and, all the different things. That's what made football. That's what brought football to what it is today, and you see those roots and you see the guys, the way they played it back then. And the game was a tremendously different game. You put some of those wide receivers, that we have now back in those days back then, and they ain't making it. You know what I mean? It was just a much different game, a lot more smash mouth, a lot more. It was a true war out there, and now it's not. It's a little softer than it was.
Before I let you go, Pags, I always said one thing. They said a lot of those players couldn't play today because they're a lot more talented, and I say maybe Tom Brady couldn't have made it 5 years back then because he would have been destroyed on every play. So we'll never know. It'll be interesting. It's always an interesting debate. We're going to let you go, Paz. We're going to get a couple commercials in here, and we got our next Mets expert coming on. So the Mets, right from your division, Pags. We got him coming on right after you leave. You have a great day. We always enjoy you being here with us. And we'll see you next
quick. I'm sorry, just real quick, because there is a fifth franchise in Philadelphia. They play a big game tonight against the Costa Rican team. The Philadelphia Union are going, and they're in the CONCACAF. We're up 1-0. I know we don't ever talk soccer here, but I'm going to be down there at the game tonight, and I want to definitely say, "Dupe, let's go Union."
Dude, I love you. You're something else. All right, Pags, you have a great week, and we'll be talking later.
Excellent.
Have a great night, guys.
You too, my friend. So there you go. Pags again with his great information. He's very entertaining. He knows a lot about Eagles. Of course, Philly sports. That's why we have him on. Has a great show over there. Folks, we're going to take a quick break, about a few minutes, but we got a special treat for you coming up. We've got our Mets expert, Josh Rubin, has been on with us once, knows a lot about the Mets. And right now the Mets are in first, believe it or not, percentage-wise. So we'll be talking to him right after these messages. Folks, don't go nowhere.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over? I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink? Grandma? This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay,
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Infoline. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. We're here. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Jack Hirsch. Just had Philly Sports Guy on. And next up, Jack, we got a treat for all MLB fans and the Met fans because we got our expert coming up here, Josh Rubin. And let's bring him in right. Yes, sir. Meet the Mets and greet the Mets. And we'll be pulling up right now our special guest who came with us, as I said, one time, Jack, and he did such a great job. I was anxious for him to get back on. We got Josh Rubin, and let me bring up his banner real quick so we can bring him in right. Josh Rubin, he's a Mets expert, I would say, Jack. He knows everything about the Mets.
There's been complaints about you, Mac, that you talk too much about the Yankees and don't give the Mets any equal time. So don't make this seem like you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, Mac. There's a lot of pressure, so you're trying to get some Mets stuff on.
Yeah,
good morning, guys.
How you doing, Josh?
Good morning.
Good, thank you.
I'm in the middle of an argument between Mac and myself.
As I said before,
one-sided.
As I said before, Josh, I've been following the Mets since 1969 when I was 7 years old. My grandfather was a huge Mets fan, and of course. I think before that, I think he was a New York Giants fan before they left, and he went over to the Mets when the Mets came about. So there's a lot.
The Mets started in the Polo Ground, so that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And the Dodger fans were brokenhearted when the Dodgers left, but we don't hear about the Giant fans being brokenhearted when the Giants left for San Francisco.
It's a good point. It's a good point, Jack. I don't really have too much. I don't hear too much about that. But anyway, the Mets, of course, took on the colors of the Dodgers and of the Giants in their uniforms, the blue and orange, kind of a tribute to both teams after they left. So, Ruben, I'm going to start you off with something I do to some of our experts because I want to see how much they really know about their teams. It's probably going to be, hopefully, an impossible question for you to answer. So, we're going to give you a little Mets trivia.
Sure.
All right, great. I mean, I do this to Jack all the time and try and stump him, the Philly sports guys, all our guests. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this trivia question at you and see if you know the answer to it. So what Met, who was traded from the Mets to the Expos and had a hit for both teams the same day?
Oh, gosh. I've heard this question before. I know it's from the 80s, right?
I don't give hints away here, Josh.
I've heard this question, and I'm not going to get it.
I'll
defer to you.
Yeah, I think I'm not certain this is the right answer, but is it UB Brooks?
No, but that's close, Jack. That's close. So
okay.
The man traded was Joel Youngblood.
Joel Youngblood.
Yes. He got traded and had a hit for both the Mets and for the Expos in the same day. So the Mets are tied with the Phillies right now in percentages, right? So Stroman's throwing some stuff out there. It definitely looks like he's back in form. You got your number 2 as long as he stays healthy and everything. Gives you a big 1-2 punch. What do you think about number 3? What are we looking at, Josh?
Well, it's looking like Carrasco's still several weeks away, based on what they said on the broadcast yesterday. That he's still rehabbing and he's moving over to Brooklyn to make some starts. The only thing he hasn't done is basically full out run. David Peterson did not look good in his first start. I think he gave up 6 runs in 4 innings. That was a disappointing first start because he did pitch well for them last year. But it's looking like Taijuan Walker is separating himself as their clear number 3. He looked very strong yesterday in the first game, and he had the strikeout going, which they mentioned that his career high in strikeouts is 11, which is a nice game, but he had 7 very, very early on yesterday, and so I like what I've seen from him.
Yeah, definitely. The bullpen. Familia did okay yesterday. I mean, he pitched pretty well. Still a sore spot for you guys, or do you think you'll pull it together? I mean,
Always.
2 years ago, you guys had an unbelievable winning streak. That bullpen just held you up, man. So do you think they should be doing something as far as maybe looking into another reliever, or you're going to stand pat with what you got?
Well, they have another reliever coming back eventually in Seth Lugo. He was our most consistent reliever over the last 5 years, really. And obviously he made some spot starts in that 2015 season as well. But once he comes back, I think he can really shore up the bullpen if he's even 80% of what he's been over the last couple of years. Something that, I mean, all Mets fans kind of have lamented the bullpen as long as I've been following the team. So that's always a sore spot. But something I can't stand are these guys that can only pitch in save situations. If they're in with a 4-run lead or if they're in a tie game, all of a sudden they can't pitch, which that's specific to closers usually. Edwin Diaz obviously looked much better last year than he did 2 years ago. But then in that DeGrom start on Saturday, he couldn't keep the game close in the 9th inning. He gave up a
I don't understand how the Mets could come back with Edwin Diaz as their closer and then rely on him fully for that. He wasn't exactly lights out last year. He was okay. He was decent, but nothing special. And the year before that, he was horrendous. And I can't believe the Mets had no serious backup plan for the bullpen. I know you're talking about Lugo, but he's being regarded as more of a setup man.
But that's arbitrary in my mind. Why do we have to have these arbitrary titles, setup man, closer? Just go with the hot hand. Go with the guy who can get guys out. Whether they're right-handed, lefty specialist,
Because
that.
it's baseball, they never go with a hot hand. If the number 7 hitter's going great, they feel they have to keep him in the number 7 slot.
Yes,
there.
it's the most superstitious sport ever.
They don't shuttle guys in the batting order. If one guy's in a slump and he's hitting first to second normally, move him down to 7th or 8th for the time being. But they don't do that in baseball.
But unless you got a guy like Mariano Rivera, who's the surest 3 outs in the history of the game, just go with the guy who's going to get the other team out. I don't care who's pitching in the 9th if they can get 3 outs before surrendering a run. That's all the fans care about.
I listen, I agree with everything you're saying. Lugo wanted to be a starter.
For contract reasons, right? We talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, the guy has good stuff. I mean, I don't see. I know you'd lose a great middle relief guy. I know that, but would you rather have a real good starter in your 3 or 4 spot, or do you really want that middle relief? I'm not saying being wasted, Josh, but if you're down 4-0. The middle relief, all he's doing is trying to hang in there for the later innings. If you got a good 3 or 4 starter that can, you can jump out 4-0, doesn't that put the other team in a more defensive position?
Maybe that's a topic for your Saturday debate show. Would you rather have a good 3 or 4 starter or a good middle reliever? I know you guys debated reliever versus DH this past weekend. Right. So I mean, obviously there's merits to both, and something that Doc had brought up was that DHs play every day, whereas starters only play once every 5 days. So middle relievers pitch more often than starters. So you could argue they're more valuable in that sense. But I hear your argument also about, hey, if you're not in a position to win, then what do you need a good middle reliever for?
Right. I mean, that's what drove me crazy, absolutely out of my mind about the Yankees the last few years, is that they're more worried about their relievers than their starting pitcher. And that's great when you're playing against teams that aren't that good, where you can overpower them. But once you get up in the playoffs and you start facing good pitchers and you got a good bullpen, who the hell cares? I mean, if you're losing 3-0, 4-0, who cares if you got a great bullpen, right? So that's what's driving me crazy about the Yankees always going after the bullpen.
Well, I think the Mets' difficulty this year is more than the bullpen. The way they're constructed defensively, they're not a good team. I mean, then the DH would actually benefit the Mets, not so much offensively, because they could take one of their weaker defensive players out of the lineup. Okay? I'm just saying.
You're talking about Dom Smith in left field and get
Dom Smith really
Kevin Pillar.
He really belongs at first base.
He does.
So
yeah, but his bat is very valuable.
One of them should be DHing.
Yeah, so I agree. And when they have an outfield of Pilar, Nimmo, Conforto, that is their best defensive outfield. So if we could keep Smith's bat in the lineup, that would be great. Well, without sacrificing defense. In the first game yesterday, the Phillies scored their first run on a sac fly to him in left field, and his throw to the plate was just putrid. But I'm not faulting him. Like you said, he's playing out of position.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, all teams, especially in the National League, run into that problem. That's why it's so hard to, for strategy-wise, when to take a pitcher out, when to, all that stuff really is the old school, right? That's the old school, and it's a little bit more, I think, a little bit more tougher to manage. So I don't know. I love Smith. I think he's a great bat, and I think he's a great young player. I really do. And it's just too bad that he can't play the outfield.
It's interesting. When he came up a couple of years ago, he was touted as like the Mets' big prospect, and he was very underwhelming. And then he got into shape. He discovered he had sleep apnea a couple of years ago, which that was like the big turnaround. If you Google articles about that, once he discovered sleep apnea and he changed his diet to either a pescatarian or vegetarian diet, he started to hit last year, he obviously tore the cover off the ball. But even 2 years ago, he was starting to hit, and he's, the average isn't there early on this season, but he's shown a little bit of pop, and he had a great spring as well.
All right, definitely.
If the Mets get off to a slow start and Francisco Lindor doesn't start hitting, and he hasn't gotten on track yet, Lindor,
7
at
games.
what point is the honeymoon over? Did the Boo Birds come out? Because, the Mets are going to have him for 11 years.
He's played 7 games, and he's got about 1,700 games to go. So let's be a little patient. I understand he's batting, I think, 150 right now.
Fans won't be patient if it's 6 weeks from now and the Mets saw 7, 8 games out of first place, and he's hitting 240 and the power numbers aren't up. And defensively, he's only good, not great. At some point, they're going to want to point the finger at someone.
You're really going worst case scenario here. He's not hitting. He's not fielding. He's not running. He's terrible.
He's got the big contract. He's the guy who supposedly is turning the franchise around. He's the face of the franchise outside of the owner, Steve Cohen.
I'm not a big fan of booing players on your own team. So I don't know when I don't know when the honeymoon period is over. Generally, Memorial Day is usually a good barometer, a good little checkpoint to see how everyone's doing. But I have faith that he'll come around. Listen, the Mets have played very inconsistently. I'm talking about in the schedule, not their quality of play. They played 7 games in 2 weeks. So it's tough to get into any type of groove as a hitter, as a pitcher, in the bullpen. So let's start to play a little bit more regularly on the calendar, and let's try to get into a groove that way. But I would say Memorial Day would be the honeymoon phase ending.
The Yankees have the same problem. I think a lot of teams have the same problem when you give out big contracts and either an injury or the play isn't as good as you thought it should be right away. And I agree with you. You got to give the guy some time. In fact, he met with who was going to be your manager, Beltran. He went and had a talk with him and got some advice from Beltran. Of course, Beltran was a great player for the Mets. And, Beltran just said, be himself, have some fun. Don't worry about the pressure. It's a great city. But you know something? That's easier said than done for a young kid.
Well, listen, Beltran, when he came, he had a terrible first season as a Met, and he got booed relentlessly. And this was another guy. I think they signed Beltran same age as Lindor when they got him. He was a premier center fielder in the league, arguably best at his position. And, we were expecting 35 to 40 home runs. I think he hit 16 home runs his first season. He had a very, very rough season. And then his second season, he exploded. So I'm not going to say I would sign for a terrible first season from Lindor because the expectations are very high based on what he's done in the majors in his career. But, maybe Beltran is the right person to talk to because he could say, listen, I've been there. I had it rough. And you just got to persevere. You just got to, keep doing your thing. It's going to come around. And when it does, the fans are absolutely going to embrace you and love you. And it's going to be great.
I think the Conforto contract is going to become an issue at some point during the season.
Especially because he's hitting so bad.
His agent is Scott Boras. Boras likes to take his clients all the way to free agency. And this is his free agent year, Conforto's. So you kind of wonder, could there be any possible scenario where the Mets trade him during the season if it's apparent that they're not going to re-sign him? I don't believe they do as long as they're in contention. But could there be a scenario where you see Conforto's on the open market this year?
Not really, because I don't know. I mean, I guess it would depend on who they're getting back, but he's their everyday right fielder, and I don't know that they have some. I think the hitting's going to come around. I don't know that they have anyone to really replace him. He's batting third right now, so his lack of hitting is very obvious. But he's good at getting hit, so that's worked to our advantage at least once this year.
Listen, I back to Lindor for one quick minute. As long as the players go through slumps and stuff like that during the year, it happens to the best of them. As long as it doesn't affect everything, if his fielding is still strong, if he's getting on base and he's stealing bases or scoring runs, just as long as he doesn't start pressing, right? I mean, that's what can happen to a player. You start pressing, start swinging. at bad pitches and start doing too much. As long as he can stay calm as he can, and his fielding is still strong, and like I said, he can get on base and maybe steal a base or score or stretch another base hit into a double or something, then, he'll be fine, I think.
He hurt them on Saturday in the first inning of that DeGrom start. They had first and third and nobody out, and he got caught stealing second. And then they had back-to-back strikeouts, and they wound up not scoring for DeGrom. And then obviously they never score for him, so they wound up ending up with 0 runs that game. But yeah, I agree. It's a long season. It's only been 7 games. And like I said, it's been tough to get into a groove because of the calendar. But if he has a 7-game slump in the middle of the season, are people going to react like this? Just look at it, as a very, very small sample size and a very long season.
Have the Mets ever had more of a hard luck play than DeGrom? The lack of hitting support. I mean, it's not going on for.
No, I don't think any team ever has.
It's been going on like 3 years. The lack of support.
Jacob, right over since 2018, I think it was. Since 2017, Jacob DeGrom's ERA is 2.06. And that's in 75 starts, and the Mets are 10 games under 500 in those starts. In his career, he's had 87 starts where he's thrown at least 6 innings and given up 0 or 1 run, and he's only won 23 of those games out of 87 starts. And now wins, obviously, as we see, the pitcher doesn't have a lot of control over getting a win. Who got the win yesterday in the first game? Trevor May, who gave up it was an unearned run, obviously, that should have been that was on McCann on the pass ball. But he winds up getting the win, and we see it all the time with closers. They blow the save, they get the win. So win is kind of an arbitrary stat also. But yeah, Jacob DeGrom has to be the hardest luck player in the history of Major League Baseball.
You gave me an idea. When we talk about baseball, what should be the biggest rule change? Maybe we should determine who impacted the team positively the best to get the win. It shouldn't be like the way we do it now. If pitcher pitches 7 innings, he leaves it's tied. The team ultimately wins and he's pitched 7 great innings. He should get the win because he contributed the most.
Supposedly the official scorer has the ability to do that already, but you absolutely never, ever hear about that happening, ever. But supposedly the official scorer can do that.
Oh, I didn't know that. I said actually he could give anyone the win he wants.
I've never seen it done, wow. but yeah.
Well, that's very interesting.
How about I'm sorry, Mac, but Jack, how about your boy Brandon Nimmo? I know you'd rather have Brett Gardner, but Brandon Nimmo, all this guy does is get on base. He's got a 580 on base.
You notice what Gotti is doing? Aaron Boone is playing him ahead of Clint Frazier now. He's looking to move guys out of the lineup to play Gotti. Brandon Nimmo's off to a great start. But so is Brett Gardner.
How about this? Over the last 3 years since 2018, they flashed this stat on the broadcast yesterday. I don't know if you saw. Brandon Nimmo has the 6th highest on-base percentage in all of baseball.
Brandon Nimmo has been out of the lineup a lot since 2018.
This is minimum 1,000 plate appearances. So this is not a small sample size.
Listen, while Gardner was playing a lot in 2019, 2020, Nimmo wasn't playing because he was hurt. But Nimmo is younger, so from that fact,
1,000 plate appearances, Jack. 1,000 plate appearances.
Nimmo is doing great this year, so it's not an argument. It's I can win saying anything about anti-Nimmo. I mean, listen, he's a good player. He's a good player. But let him stay healthy the way Gardner does.
He didn't win the debate either on that. I'll let you know. So
Gaudi's doing great, though. Gaudi's not a charity case.
No. That wasn't the debate whether Gardner.
Did you see the catch Gardner made the other day in left center field? He sprinted 121 feet. Nimmo's never made a catch like that. I mean, come on.
Gary Matthews Jr. made a great catch once.
Yes. So Dwight Gooden comes on the record and he says that maybe Rojas is in over his head. Now, we all know Rojas is a very young manager, but he did at least coach in the minor leagues. He knows a lot of the younger players. He's been very successful in the minor leagues as a manager. I think he came in last year at the worst possible time during a COVID crisis with the Mets, a whole front office up in smoke and fire. And I mean, to me, in my opinion, he was pretty strong there. I mean, you know, he may not have made every move right, no manager does, but without any guidance last year during a COVID season for his first year, and the Mets were at least competitive somewhat, I really believe that Rojas is going to turn out to be a good manager.
Can I just cut in, Josh? I just have to make a comment about this beforehand. Alex Cora and AJ Finch are back managing in the big leagues. Alex Cora with his
Why isn't Carlos Beltran? Why isn't Carlos Beltran?
AJ Finch.
It's not right.
He couldn't go back to Houston because he had
yeah.
Dusty Baker. That's understood, but he immediately got a job with the Tigers. Carlos Beltran's not back for Luis Rojas. Are you kidding me?
You took the words right. That's exactly what I was going to say. You took it out of my mouth.
But it gives me the idea, the thought, that Carlos Beltran would not have been Sandy Alderson's guy to begin with, never would have gotten the job in the first place, so he doesn't feel he has to go back to him. But Carlos Beltran, when you look at his career in the big leagues and everything he's did in the front office as well, how he's not the manager of the team, and they're sticking with Luis Rojas after they had a dismal year last year. You know, something seems to be unfair about it.
I think dismal is a bit harsh. What were they, 26 and 34? And like
personnel, that's dismal.
We litigated 2 weeks ago. They had the highest average in the league. They just lacked clutch hitting and had terrible base running errors. And they lack clutch hitting again this year. Their numbers with runners in scoring position is nauseating.
How do you feel about Carlos Beltran not being given another opportunity here?
I think I agree with everything you said. I think it's totally unfair. And it's tough for Luis Rojas, like Mac was saying. He came in under really tough conditions with the COVID year, but he came in under terrible circumstances, knowing that he wasn't their first pick for manager. It's kind of like the consolation prize. Like, all right, we'll give it to you since we have to save face with this whole Beltran scandal being involved with the sign stealing. But Beltran, when he was a player, when he was with the Yankees, when he was with the Astros later in his career, players absolutely loved him. And he almost served as like a de facto bench coach as the veteran the veteran presence on those rosters. And I really think he would have done a great job. I loved it when they announced it originally, and it sucks that he's been, I don't want to say blackballed, but it sucks that he hasn't been given the opportunity that Cora and Hinch have gotten after serving their 1 year suspension.
I'm going to give you my theory on that, guys. All right. I think that Beltran does not want to manage the Mets anymore. I really believe because he stepped down. You had, Cohen comes in. Cohen could have hired him if he wanted to, right? I mean, Cohen doesn't have to listen to anybody. He's his own man's man. He don't care what the league says. So why wouldn't he bring Beltran back? I think there's something more than what we're thinking, that he's just being blackballed. I think Beltran lost interest in managing after that, and I don't even know if he wants to manage anymore, because I believe that if he was that much better than Rojas, Cohen would have scooped him up. I really believe that.
I don't know. I have a hard time thinking that a guy like Carlos Beltran doesn't want to at least be around a major league team, a baseball lifer like that. And I think he thinks that he has a lot to offer in some sort of coaching role or managerial role. So I'm not sure. And obviously only Carlos Beltran knows the answer to that. But also, I don't know how that would have looked from a PR standpoint to get rid of Luis Rojas after, a tough year last year, obviously, stepping up and going through all these COVID protocols. And, I don't think it was a brutal season last year, but, it's tough to get rid of a manager after 1 year without much ground to stand on.
Mac asked a question. They asked the weirdest questions, either or. Who do you take, Mr. Met or the Philly Fanatic, amongst the mascots? That was one of Mac's questions. I went with the Philly fanatic, Doc, who was on the debate show, he went with Mr. Met. I'm not sure. Matt couldn't care less. Mac, I don't think even gave an opinion.
Well, I have to go Mr. Met. I've got the bobblehead in my son's nursery, so so I see it every day.
Yeah, that has to be it. I think I'll tell you this. I think when your son gets a little older, he would probably enjoy the Philly mascot a little bit more than the Mets because he's a pretty wild guy.
Only one of them ever got into a fight with Tommy Lasorda, so the Philly fanatic has the edge on that one.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. So, what's your outlook? Before we let you go, Josh, what's your outlook? What do the Mets have to do? Are we looking at another starting pitcher? You got, like you said, you do got Lugo coming back. Do you see anything else they need to really improve position players? Should they be looking to try something different on that front? You're the manager. What would you be looking for, say, in the next 20 games for the Mets?
So, well, one, we've got Carrasco and Syndergaard coming back at some point. Carrasco in a couple of weeks and Syndergaard hopefully by June. So it's about kind of staying afloat until then in terms of the rotation, hoping we can get some quality starts out of the back end of the rotation behind DeGrom. Again, like you said, Stroman looked good. And I agreed with everything Stroman said after the Sunday rain out, after throwing 9 pitches. And really kind of gutsy performance to come back on 1 day's rest yesterday to throw 6 shutout. He should have went for that complete game, that coveted complete game shutout, 7 innings. And the Mets got the rare extra inning walk-off in the 8th also in the first game, something that we're not used to. But, we got to try to minimize injuries, try to stay healthy, and we got to have clutch hitting. That's what the Mets have to look for because, like I said, their average with runners in scoring position is terrible right now. I'm not big into making moves 7 games into the season. Let's see what we got, through next 20 days takes us into the first week of April. Hopefully we're a couple games over 500 in that time. And what we want to see is just a couple of hot streaks, 3-4 game winning streaks, play 500 ball, another 3-game winning streak, play 500 ball. That's what good teams do. Just try to mitigate the losing streaks, try to minimize that, and try to stay at the top of the division where they belong.
All right, excellent job again.
Wait, just one quick thing. Top of the division, where they belong. I mean, no one says they belong top of the division.
What do you mean, Jack? 2 weeks ago, you said that they're your wild card pick, and they're only their projected wins is 1 less than the Braves.
But wild card pick isn't top of the division. That's second.
So if they finish 1 game behind the Braves at the end of the year, that's not considered at the top of the division.
Well, I didn't put them 1 game behind the Braves. But I'm just saying, no, listen, I think the Mets are going to make the playoffs this year because I'm, like you're mentioning, the guys like Carrasco, Syndergaard coming back. That boost is going to be invaluable. That's going to be a
Let me be careful with my words. Towards the top of the division.
Towards the top of the division.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, the Yankees, you can say about the Yankees should be at top of the division where they belong.
We don't do the Yankees right now, Jack. Do you see what I got to go through every day, Josh?
The Yankees belong.
You're a good man, Matt.
That's the Yankees' birthright, the top of the division.
He does, right? He opens it up with Mac does not talk enough about the Mets. He talks too much about the Yankees. Who's talking about the Yankees right now, Josh?
Yeah, listen, we have to hold them accountable. That's all we can do. Yes.
All right. Okay.
That's a great shirt, Jack.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of reviews on this one.
Very caliente.
Good reviews. Yeah.
John, thank
you.
you.
When we have a big audition, Mac and myself somewhere with executives.
Yeah,
I'm addressing this.
Yeah, when we're in Hawaii and we're at a luau, Jack will be very much involved. So, okay, Josh, I appreciate you coming on. Yeah. Hopefully, we can get you in here on a regular, my friend. If Wednesday's good for you, it would be great. If not, let me know and we'll get you in as soon as we can. We really appreciate you coming in.
Appreciate it, guys. Good talking to you.
All right, have a good
one. Take care. Thanks.
Take care.
Good job. So there you go, Jack. Josh Rubin with your Mets report. He does a great job. It's great to have him on for the Mets fans, and I enjoy watching the Mets also, I have to confess. So we'll be seeing you right after this quick break, guys. We'll be back. This is our last break, but we got a lot more sports on the other side. Please stick with us and give us a couple minutes. Thank you.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just...
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Infoline. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. Our first day back for the week, Wednesday. We're on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, the legendary boxing writer and future Boxing Hall of Famer, Jack Hirsch. And Jack, we just had our med expert on, Josh Rubin. We've had our Philly guy on, and what I'll do is just gonna go ahead and take a couple seconds here to go over some business that we should be taking care of while we're on the air. As you know, we are on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. We're there with a bunch of shows. They have at least 15 shows over there on the network. You can go by Facebook search. Just go on over and search N.E. Perry Streaming Sports, as it's spelled, and you could check all the shows. Or you could go over to our YouTube channel where you could subscribe if you wish and check out the shows that way. It's a great channel, again, with all our shows on there. We got some really good shows to watch. We're also on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and iTunes. If you can't make it to a screen, we're there during work, during your workouts, whatever you're doing, where you can't make it to a screen and watch us. You can listen to our audio there. And also, we're on Zodiac TV streaming live right now. Zodiac and us have partnered up. They're going to be doing a big thing at the end of April where they'll have their big party, their big send-off as they go worldwide. It's going to be awesome, Jack, and I'm glad we're on Zodiac. We partnered up with them. It's another great outlet where, it's for a new generation over there, Jack. We're part of a new generation. I didn't even know that.
I like the old generation too, Mac. I mean, I don't want to forget all the great things out of the past. We're old school, Mac. That's what the new generation likes about us. We're old school, Mac. You have this desire to be new school. I like staying old school. I don't want to lose being old school.
I'll never lose being old school, Jack, because that's where my memories come from, and that's some of the greatest sports I've seen. But you got to remember, Jack, there's a lot of great sports going on right now, and those will be memories to this new generation as they get older, and we just get older and just start forgetting who our name is. You know what I mean?
Mac, it used to be where one team who come in first would go to the finals, then they added a few. But new school is this. Take the NBA. The NBA is the ultimate new school. There are 15 teams in the East, 15 teams in the West. And under this new playoff format or whatever, end the season format, 10 of the 15 teams are still alive. Yes. 10 of the 15 teams. It's hard not to back into the playoffs now. That's new school for you. Old school, you had to earn it, baby. Not like, it is today.
Yeah. I mean, you got a great point, Jack. It's a lot easier to make the playoffs than it used to be. And Carlos is over there making fun of your shirt again, which I'm glad he's doing that, Jack. You're muted, Jack, and it's the best you've ever sounded. Unmute your mic, Jack, so we all can hear you.
Mac, I was so upset I got a bottle of water. I was grabbing for a bottle of water. My mic got muted at the time. But what was it quite about the shirt? I like the shirt. I believe you have to look good on here, so on. And I'm going to be conscious of my wardrobe, going forward.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you've added a touch of class in Hawaii to the show. So, I mean, I'm really, really excited about your show.
Listen, isn't Tua Hawaiian?
Last I heard, he's from the, I'm trying to remember the exact term.
And I'm a big booster Tua, so when I'm backing him, maybe I'll wear this shirt.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. And I think, with your love affair with Aaron Rodgers, you'll probably be watching a lot more Jeopardy today too, Jack.
I'm not big on Jeopardy because it kind of shows me how little I know when I watch the show. I mean, I can't even take a guess to make it look good. Listen, Matt, when I miss your trivia questions, I can have a little damage control. Okay, I could look good missing the questions, but for the actual Jeopardy, it is not. I'm so far off on some of them, it's kind of comical.
Yes, and Carlos thinks you should be wearing shades right now, Jack.
I might try that a show. I might. I'm actually facing kind of the sun and the lake right now, but I'm keeping kind of focused on the screen. I mean, I can look up and no one would know the difference. I might do that one show, Mac. If I'm so disgusted with you, I'm going to look the other way, and I won't even have to see you, but on screen it'll look like I'm looking at you. I mean, what a scenario.
That's a great scenario, Jack. So, as I said, folks, we're on a lot of different platforms. All Northeast Streaming Sports is on a lot of different networks and platforms. So, check us out. I mean, there's some incredible shows that we're part of over there, and they're just growing and growing, and eventually they'll be taking over the sports world, Jack, is my prediction anyway. So we got some sports updates to go over, Jack, that we haven't touched on because we've had our guests, and of course we do our baseball review and we go through all the major sports. But Molly Lillard, a volleyball standout, daughter, I know you know this guy's name, Al Toon, former New York Jet wide receiver, was found dead in a murder-suicide. It looks like her husband shot her and shot himself, leaving behind an 8-month-old daughter, Jack.
I mean, awful news. I mean, just absolutely awful news. What could I say? Absolute tragedy. Our heart goes out to the victim. What happened with her, it's hard to even put into words. It's so horrible, and a heart goes out to Al Toon and his family. Just awful.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, I mean, this happens a lot, of course, because it's Al Toon's daughter. It's out there in the sports news. But there's relationships are tough, Jack. I mean, we all go through problems in our relationships, and I don't want to dwell on this too much. But I mean, I guess there's got to be signs. I wish somebody would have stepped in beforehand. Maybe they couldn't. I don't know. But I really feel bad, not only for for Molly Lillard, but I feel really bad for her daughter not having parents there. So that's a kind of a sad thing that happened.
Just one quick. I mean, it's easy to say that there's signs afterwards when you look upon it, but sometimes at the time you just don't see them through living everyday life. A sports personality who passed away. I don't know, were you going to mention it? Bob Leonard, the former coach of the Indiana Pacers. Mac, I mean, he passed away, Bobby Leonard, at the age of 88. He coached the Indiana Pacers when they won the ABA to multiple ABA titles. And when we think of an Indiana basketball coach, we always think of Bobby Knight. But Bobby Leonard was of that caliber. And in fact, George McGinnis said he would scold players out the same way Bobby Knight did, but then he would take them out for a beer afterwards and sit down and tell them how much he cared about them. So the players, truly loved Bobby Leonard. And I remember hearing him interviewed a number of times. And he was truly, an iconic guy, Bob Leonard, in the ABA. And he passed away at age 88.
In a little better news, it looks like Finch Life Stadium, a Negro Leagues ballpark, is being restored, where the New York Black Yankees and the New York Cubans played. I can see this, Jack, if they decide to anyway, a place where they could play all-star games, maybe a game or two during the season to tribute the Negro Leagues. I can see the stadium being not only a monument, but being used in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, with Major League Baseball, earlier this year, they decided to recognize the Negro League players as Major League players officially. But nothing should take away from the Negro Leagues. They were special. And I think we're at the point now where we realize some of those great Negro League players like, Josh Gibson, Buck Leonard, Satchel Paige, who later went to the Major Leagues. I mean, they're iconic players. I mean, they would have been great Major League players. And there was a great brand of baseball that they played. And we really should cherish, the Negro Leagues for what they contributed, in the past to the sport. And we should appreciate it more and more as we go along.
Jack, Mike, there you go. I read a lot about this. Of course, I'm a history buff when it comes to certain things. And this was, a lot of the fans in the Negro Leagues weren't happy when they joined the major leagues, when they all integrated into the major leagues, when they started the integration, because they felt it was their own. And they would have unbelievable amount of fans there that could go watch their own players play. So it's really interesting how, not only did the Major League kind of discriminate against the Negro Leagues, I mean, they played them in all-star games, stuff like that once in a while, even the Cuban leagues and stuff. But a lot of the fans did not want their teams to integrate or their players to integrate into Major League Baseball, Jack.
Well, you know what it is, Major League Baseball, when they finally opened their doors to the black ball players, they took the elite players, understandably, okay? So it really did weaken the Negro Leagues, out by doing that. Plus, what would have been really interesting, and I've never heard this mentioned, I would have liked to have seen the Negro Leagues go against the Major Leagues, and I don't think the Major Leagues would have wanted that. They may have won the Major Leagues, had they gone head-to-head, but maybe they wouldn't have. And especially during that time, it would have been an embarrassment people forget that when Major League Baseball first allowed the black player in, there was an unwritten rule, even when there were enough black players on the roster, that the majority of the starting lineup on the field had to be white. It's totally absurd now when you think of it. But out of the position players, at least 5 of the 9 had to be white. So Major League Baseball wouldn't have wanted to lose to the Negro Leagues any more than the NFL would have wanted to lose to the AFL. The NBA wouldn't have wanted to lose to the ABA if they went head-to-head, because they would have been a young upstart league with obviously a lot of talent.
No, I agree with that 100%, Jack. Carlos just mentioned that Madoff did pass away. He put a hurting on the Mets with that Ponzi scheme, Jack. That the Mets owners cried about that hurting them financially for years, and maybe it did. I don't know. I don't know if Madoff is the only reason, but
I didn't realize Bernie Madoff. I forgot about him, that he was still alive. So he just passed away. It came over. What a tragic thing what he did with his family. You know what? One of his sons committed suicide. The other son, died of cancer. I guess the constant worry and what he did with his wife, to his wife, and look at all the victims who he cheated out, with the Ponzi scheme. You talk about good legacies, and then you talk about terrible legacies. Bernie Madoff has the ultimate, terrible legacy as far as being a swindler.
Very true. Of course, Patriots news. Edelman retires, Jack. He announced his retirement. I have a feeling, Jack, he retired from the Patriots, and so did Gronkowski. I would not be surprised in a couple years that if Brady is still there, or maybe next year even, that Edelman may find his way to Tampa Bay. What do you think?
Anything is possible, Mac, but I doubt it, because his retirement came under medical conditions with the NFL, and the Patriots waited to fill out the paperwork so he could collect a couple of more $1 million or something along those lines. And it's a medical thing why he retired. Supposedly, he still would have been willing to play and for New England as well, but it's a medical issue with him. And listen, in the NFL, unless you're young, if you take off a couple of years, even 1 year, it's hard to come back. I know Rob Gronkowski did, but in all honesty, despite catching a couple of touchdown passes in the Super Bowl, Gronkowski's not quite the same player he was before. When you're one of the greatest tight ends in history, even when you slow down, you're still good. You're no longer great, but you're still pretty good, even though you're not the player you were. And that's what Rob Gronkowski is now. And with all the other weapons that Tampa Bay has, Gronkowski could stay good because they can't key on him the way they did when he was with New England.
Yeah, that's a great points. Gronkowski was still one of the best tight end blocking-wise in the NFL.
You couldn't bring Gronk down when he had the ball with New England. You'd have to gang tackle him.
Well, a lot of his injuries, I think, came from because, you couldn't lead with the helmet anymore, which probably would have helped Gronk. That, all of a sudden they start cutting you at the legs and hits in the back. And I think that has, there's an old saying, Jack, amongst football players before all these new rule changes. They'd rather get hit, upper body, whether you're leading with a helmet or not, than at the knees. And with the new rules, if you went after somebody's knees, there was a fight on the field. Now that's where they have to tackle, and that's hurting a lot of players a lot more than the big hits upstairs, Jack. So, we're worried about the concussions and stuff. But if you think about it, what's more important in football than your knees?
Yeah, but they don't want players leading with the helmet. There are rules as far as hitting the guy in the knees as well. They were aware of that. I think they have to have a deception rule. I've said this on past shows with quarterbacks. If a quarterback is running towards the sidelines, okay, he shouldn't be allowed to all of a sudden put on a fake and continue to try to get a few extra yards, because the defender is already starting his descent as far as easing up on the hit. He's not going all out. He's got to ease up at the last moment. So I don't like the idea of the quarterback being allowed any type of fake or any type of running back. It drives me crazy sometimes when I see these sideline hits, because the player all of a sudden steps out of bounds by a couple of feet, but the defender who's running at top speed, all of a sudden he's asked to slam on the brakes and not hit him hard. So that's a difficult thing.
I agree with that too, Jack. Of course, we knew that the son of Andy Reid, their coach, Britt Reid, got in trouble for drunk driving, got in an accident, and caused brain damage to a 5-year-old. They're talking 1 to 7 years, Jack. 1 to 7 can mean 1, or of course it could mean 7, or anywhere in between. He's out on $100,000 bond, and of course the relatives of this 5-year-old child are very upset with that ruling.
Well, he was traveling reportedly 83 miles per hour and intoxicated. And, you know, with Andy Reid, I think his other son committed suicide. Now, with this son, Brett Reid, he's had a lot of troubles in the past. He came with his dad to Kansas City, worked as an assistant coach. And, you know, how does Andy Reid go back to coaching next year and concentrate on the job? How do you concentrate on the job knowing that your son is up on these charges and that his personal life is in turmoil because of that? Yet is football his escape? Does he just throw himself into his work? And there's a school of thought that it may have affected the Chiefs in the Super Bowl loss to the Buccaneers because he had this on his mind, you know, because it happened before the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. And you know, I know in football, when you come to coaching, you're doing the extra hours, you're reviewing tape, you're going over strategy, you're looking at matchups, you're talking to your coaches, your players, your key players. And with something like that on the front burner, not even on the back burner, Jack, when this directly involves you and your family, it had to affect them. I'm not saying the Chiefs lost because of that, but it sure was part of it, Jack. It had to be.
Well, one of these family things, you know, they could affect you in different ways. I don't know why I was thinking the other day, Don Shula, when he coached against his son, David Shula, when David Shula was the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, and Don Shula was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins had a really good team, the Bengals not so much. And Don Shula said before the game, no, my commitment's 100% to my team to win. You kind of wonder, it's not really 100% there, because you know deep down he wouldn't mind his son, who badly needed a win, would beat his team. So that's kind of like a sticky situation. As much as you try to shut things out, it's impossible to do so. It's just impossible, and it had to be impossible for Andy Reid before the Super Bowl, like it's going to be virtually impossible going forward next year.
Oh, I agree, Jack, and that brings us to they talk about the curse where somebody loses a Super Bowl, and sometimes the next year they don't even make the playoffs. Of course, injuries, all kinds of things have to do with that. But with this case still out there, and Carlos brought up a point just before I put this comment up, you know, is that going to be too much for Andy Reid to come back to and concentrate on the Chiefs head coaching job? As you say, it might be a getaway. You know, it might be something to take his mind off, but head coaching is a lot more than just a getaway, Jack.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. If Andy Reid, for any reason, wasn't going to coach the Chiefs anymore, they have a head coach in waiting, Eric Bieniemy. He was supposed to be the hottest assistant coach in all of football to get a head coaching position. And for some reason, it just never happened. And Patrick Mahomes raves about Eric Bieniemy, raves about him. They love him there in Kansas City. And the Chiefs didn't even re-sign Eric Bieniemy because they assumed he was going to for sure have a head coaching position elsewhere. But it didn't work. But it hasn't worked out for some wild reason. Eric Bieniemy hasn't gotten a head coaching job.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, there's an old saying and amongst football, a bunch of football people, that just because you're a great coordinator doesn't mean you're going to be a great head coach. In a lot of cases, some coordinators in a lot of cases don't become great head coaches because they can't run the whole show. They're more of a detail guy.
Matt, I agree with you. You're right, 100%. But when you're a better coordinator than the other guys and they're getting jobs over you, then there's something wrong there. Okay, and I don't know what it is with Eric Bieniemy. We'll touch upon that at another time.
Oh, yeah, definitely, Jack. Great show today, my friend. Thanks to all the guests that came on today, our two main guests. And thank you all for joining us today. Our day back, Jack, to start the week again, which I really love doing. And we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same channel. Hopefully you all join us. Thank you for, again, coming in today. And y'all have a great Wednesday. And we'll see you tomorrow.